Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today we have a ship that doesn't really seem to get featured very often. Which is surprising because the USS North Carolina really is a fantastic Tier 8 battleship. In charge of the North Carolina today we have Ghostbuster in a Tier 8 ranked sprint battle, hence the 7 versus 7 format. Both teams have 3 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 1 aircraft carrier. Unsurprisingly, since carriers are involved in this version of ranked sprint, nobody seems to be keen to play a destroyer, which is understandable. Carriers are much better at scouting, and unlike destroyers, aircraft carriers are basically invulnerable until the end of the battle. Now, at the beginning of this battle, Ghostbuster is offering some advice to his team in chat, and I want to make it absolutely clear that he's making suggestions based on his experience of how this map in particular works in this format. He's not being rude, he's not making demands, he's just offering advice. And the advice on this particular occasion is to not ignore the alpha cap, not leave the flank open. He's not saying, hey, you two cruisers, Irian, Edinburgh, go and cap alpha. He's not saying Vladivostok, go and cap alpha with them. What he is saying is don't leave that flank exposed. It would be useful if you three, in particular, since you're there anyway, could get yourselves in a position to counter any threat from the enemy team on that flank. Please don't leave it exposed. It's not just a cap circle. There's a big cluster of islands there that the enemy team can use to take advantage of and catch us in a crossfire if we ignore that flank. That's all he's saying, and he's being pretty polite and respectful about it. He's just offering the benefit of his experience and making a pretty useful suggestion. Now, of course, the rest of his team are under no obligation whatsoever to listen to him. But we'll just see how things pan out, and then you can decide for yourself whether or not they should have. And in particular, we're talking about the Vladivostok. Because what the Vladivostok is doing right now is sailing into what will be a crossfire if the enemy team occupy Alpha. The Vladivostok doesn't even have to go all the way down to Alpha. He can cover it perfectly well from the position where the Edinburgh is sitting at this precise moment, and he can tank that corner a damn sight better than the Edinburgh can, while still having no shortage of targets to shoot at. Instead, he's sailing in open water. But, well, it's his ship, he can play it any way he likes. He's under no obligation to listen to advice, whether it be friendly, respectful, or rude and downright obnoxious. And the reason I'm making such a big song and dance about exactly how polite Ghostbuster is being is because, as you're going to see in chat, his division mate in the Lexington isn't anywhere near as nice and patient as Ghostbuster is. He's going to be a bit of a dick in chat. The Edinburgh's gone down, by the way, unable to tank the corner against the Tirpitz, and it's probably around about now that the Vladivostok is hopefully thinking, and I say hopefully because if he isn't, he's an even bigger idiot than we're giving him credit for, but he's hopefully thinking that perhaps Ghostbuster was giving him some pretty good advice after all. Because if you look at his position currently on the map, in the middle of open water, giving broadside to the majority of the enemy team who are shooting at him, and if you consider where he could very easily have been instead, if he'd followed Ghostbuster's advice, tucked in around the side of the island, more or less in the same position where the Edinburgh got sunk by the Tirpitz. But the Edinburgh's a light cruiser, and he's a battleship. He'd still be getting shot at by the majority of the enemy team, but he'd have his bows pointing towards them instead of his broadside, and he's in a battleship, and he'd have an island that he could retreat behind if it started to get too hot. But he didn't do any of that, and instead of kiting away from the enemy ships to a position where possibly his teammates could help him out, he's instead driving straight in towards them, so he's dead, and now completely cut off from the rest of the team and hopelessly overextended. The Irian is dead too. And so as quickly as that, the enemy team are up 300 points and 3 kills. Ghostbuster's going to try to do something about that 3-kill lead, however. There goes the Tirpitz. So the enemy team are still up 300 points, but now they're only up 2 kills. However, that situation is going to get a damn sight worse before it starts getting any better. So, is this current disaster all the Vladivostok's fault? No, of course it isn't. The Edinburgh and the Irian both did exactly as Ghostbuster suggested, and they both died as well. Well, yeah. But the Edinburgh died because he tried to bow tank a Tirpitz in a light cruiser, and the Irian died because he went way too far south, got overextended and cut off, and then ate a bunch of torpedoes while sitting still inside a smokescreen. The advice was good, it was just the execution that was flawed. And even then, it may have still worked if the Vladivostok had still been alive and hadn't suicided in open water, and instead was in a position down there to the south, tucked in around an island, where Ghostbuster could go and back him up. But none of that happened, and so the exact situation that Ghostbuster was counselling against, keep an eye on Alpha, don't cap it, just keep an eye on it so we don't get outflanked. Well, oh look, the enemy are outflanking them from Alpha. However, before we all start pointing our fingers too firmly, squarely in the direction of the Vladivostok, let's just bear in mind that if you don't know any better, and let's face it, most of us probably don't, how can you tell the difference between good advice and bad advice? Because it's not exactly unusual at the beginning of a battle for players to be extremely free and open with their opinions as to exactly what the team should do and where it should go. And they don't always agree, and they can't all be right. So how can you tell? Well, if somebody suggests that you go somewhere and do something, and you don't, and then you die horribly and pointlessly, it's possible that they were giving you good advice. On the other hand, if you go somewhere and do something that somebody was suggesting that you do, and you die horribly and pointlessly, it's possible they were giving you very bad advice. But then again, maybe not. Maybe they were giving you very good advice, but you just sucked at executing it. You see what I mean? It's very difficult to actually know, if you don't know any better yourself, very difficult for you to actually know when somebody's giving you good or bad advice. So let's not be too harsh on the Vladivostok. Advice that I fear was completely wasted on Ghostbuster's division mate in the Lexington, who was being extremely harsh, not just on the Vladivostok, but also on the Irian and the Edinburgh, who died down to the south with him. And once again, I'm forced to ask myself the question, what exactly is the point? I mean, what do you gain from it? How does it help? Other than making you feel smug and superior, what benefit does it actually have, either for those of you on the team who have died, or those of you who are still alive and fighting? Are the dead players going to rematerialise in brand new ships and suddenly start playing better because you've called them idiots? Pretty sure the chances of that happening are fairly slim. But what about the rest of your team, the ones who are still alive and fighting and trying to win? Well, there's a fairly good chance that if you've made your introduction to them in chat by calling everybody a bunch of idiots and losers, there's a fairly good chance that they've not only reported you for misbehaviour in chat, but they've also added you to their blacklists and blocked all further communication from you. So even if you are a tactical genius, and you have the solution for winning the battle in the palm of your hand, there's a pretty good chance that nobody's going to hear it. So the act of running your mouth off in chat and putting your own teammates down doesn't really achieve anything other than stroking your own ego for a couple of seconds. In fact, all you've really done is make a bad situation worse. Oh, that was a nice hit. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get upset and pissed off with your teammates if they behave like utter idiots. I mean, of course you're going to get upset and pissed off, but keep it to yourself, maybe? But if you absolutely definitely have to do something to make yourself feel better, just do what Ghostbuster did. Report them for poor play, keep your mouth shut, and get on with trying to salvage the situation. Meanwhile, Ghostbuster had headed north and then attempted to cut over to the east to link up with the rest of his team, but that position would have exposed him to some very nasty broadside flanking fire. So instead he's hooked around that small island just up to his northeast and is now heading back in the other direction, making the most that he can of the various different islands to limit the number of enemy ships that can actually shoot back at him. Now, he's had his eye on that Vladivostok for some time, but the Charles Martel was a far more juicy target. Unfortunately, the Charles Martel got away, so yay, they've pulled a kill back. Except, well, they haven't, because while he was focusing on the Vladivostok, the Tirpitz B had hooked around all the way to the east, in open water, not taking advantage of any kind of island cover, and got himself focused down by at least 3 enemy ships, which means that Ghostbuster is now the most exposed member of the team, and it's his turn. But Ghostbuster has something that the Tirpitz didn't, because the Tirpitz was sailing in open water. He's got some concealment, which he can use to limit the number of ships that are actually capable of shooting at him. And oh, by the way, that was the high caliber award, 113,000 damage. Doesn't seem like a lot, but this is ranked sprint. There are only 7 ships on each team. Extremely conscious of the likelihood that he is about to become public enemy number one, Ghostbuster is already thinking about how he's going to turn away. There's the Charles Martel. That guy's definitely lived far too long. He landed some very juicy hits on him earlier. Was unable to finish the job. Yeah, turning away now as he's crossing that gap, that would be bad. That would be giving broadside, and, well, broadsides get punished. But there is another island, the one that the Charles Martel is changing course behind. If he can get that island between himself and those enemy ships, he should be able to execute a turn and start kiting away from there. You don't want to be giving broadside to the Massachusetts. He's already inside the Massachusetts secondary range, so it's probably only a matter of time before he's set on fire again. And he does not have a huge amount of health to play with. There's the fire. He's also taken shots from the Attigo B all the way across the other side of the map. Right, now would be the time to start executing the turn, and that's exactly what he's doing. At the moment, the Attigo B is the only ship that can actually shoot at him, and the Attigo B is punishing the Megami up to the north, who's one of his only two surviving teammates. You see how well he executed the turn there? That was perfect. He started doing it just before he crossed the gap between those two islands, at which point he would have been given broadside to the Massachusetts. He recognised the danger that he was in. He delayed the turn until he had the island there to shield him from fire from those enemy ships to the south. And now he's kiting away. What is that Charles Martel doing? He's not really. Look at where his gun turrets are pointing. You see how his turrets aren't even pointing in this direction? They were actually looking ahead. He was aiming torpedoes. Well, that was a serious error of judgment, one that he's not going to recover from. It's now 4 against 3. The Megami over there is... well, he's doing the best thing that a Megami can do under the circumstances. He's just staying at maximum range and kiting. Unfortunately, that Attigo there is seriously punishing him. Now, I have made mention of the fact that Ghostbuster's division mate in the Lexington is being a bit of a dick in chat. But he is definitely not, by far, the biggest delusional arsehole in this particular battle. No, that honour goes to the player that executed that terrible torpedo drop on Ghostbusters North Carolina, the enemy Shikaku. And you'll see why in a second. Ghostbuster unloads again at the Attigo B, desperate to try to keep the Megami alive. And the North Carolina's 45 caliber 16-inch shells do take a while to get to the target, thanks to their slow velocity. But when they hit really hard. Now pay attention to chat. Because the Lexington was being a bit of a dick, but he at least has his senses firmly enough grounded in reality to understand what game it is that he's playing. The Chicago seems to think everybody's playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Aimbotting? Really? Let's just say that Ghostbuster is using an aimbot program. I don't even know if aimbot programs exist for World of Warships. I mean, maybe they do. But for the sake of argument, let's just say that he is. Now, I have actually been keeping count of the number of shots that Ghostbuster has fired in the direction of that Attigo Bravo. That was actually the first ship that he took aim at during the course of this battle, and it took him 45 shots to sink him. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're in a battleship armed with 16-inch guns, using an aimbot, and it takes you 45 shots to sink a cruiser, I'd think about getting a refund for my aimbot program. I don't really think you're getting value for money out of the deal. The Shikaku then followed up his accusation in chat by demanding that everybody report him for being a cheater. You know, when you stop to think about the implications, that's actually quite a compliment. Being reported for being too good. Can't say that's ever happened to me, but you know, I'll live in hope. Maybe one day. Well, anyway, Ghostbuster has done an amazing job so far, but he's in the shit now. He's low on health. The enemy team are at over 900 points. They hold 2 of the caps. He's coming under attack from 3 different directions. This is not a good situation to be in. He aims the armour-piercing square at the Massachusetts turrets and is rewarded by knocking one of them out, so that's going to reduce the amount of fire coming in. But he's going to have to rely on his teammates to dig his arse out of this one. And the Megami does not let him down. high explosive coming in from the flank. That's the Megami. With the deletion of the Atago B, the Megami no longer has to worry about getting erased from the map if he gives his position away by firing. He finishes off the Massachusetts. That just leaves the Chapayev and the Shikaku. And the Chapayev, unless he wants to get deleted, had better stop shooting and hope he can go undetected. Of course, Ghostbuster is still very low on health and very exposed. Exactly the kind of target that carriers like to prey on. But as long as the Shikaku insists on dropping his torpedoes from either directly astern or directly ahead and making it as easy as possible for Ghostbuster to dodge them, it's probably safe to conclude that Ghostbuster isn't really in any significant danger of sinking anytime soon. And yep, Chapayev got paddled exactly as advertised. And of course now it doesn't really matter if he stops shooting because he's spotted from the air, so he can't go undetected. And that's really bad news if you're in a light cruiser and you're getting shot at by a battleship armed with 16-inch guns. These 45 caliber rifles do take a long time to get there. They're not like the 50 caliber rifles on the Montana and the Iowa that do have significantly more shell velocity, but when they do eventually arrive at the target, they arrive like a bunch of speeding freight trains. Enemy Shikaku has been expending aircraft at a ridiculous rate, and now that he's finding it next to impossible to push what few aircraft he can get into the air through the flak barrier, not just from the North Carolina, although his flak batteries have been severely degraded by the amount of high explosive hits that he's taken, but the Lexington is up here with him as well, with his fully intact AA batteries. Oh, that must feel so satisfying. Oh, he's done it again. Now that's justice. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more ridiculous and brain-dead in chat, the enemy Vladivostok that he sank earlier, the one who seemed to get stuck behind an island and then reversed out broadside on right in front of him and basically got paddled as a direct result, he's reporting him as well. I don't know. Maybe if you are good enough to kill 6 of the 7 enemy ships in a ranked sprint battle and do 80% of the damage to the 7th ship that you didn't sink, maybe you should get reported. What do I know? I just live here. Ghostbuster, thank you so much for sharing that battle with us. There were points during the course of that game where I didn't know whether I was going to laugh, cry or hurl. In fact, I think I may have done all 3 at the same time on more than one occasion. Extremely well played, congratulations on a very well deserved result. Everybody else, I hope you enjoy it. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.